News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset. 800-288-WBAP is our number. That's 800-288-9227. Horror in Baltimore coming in at 1:30 in the morning. And it's just unbelievable to watch that take place, that bridge collapse. So, the update is they're all six that have not been found or presumed dead, unfortunately. That was a report that came down as I was driving in late this afternoon. And so that is it. They rescued two. One did not even want to go to the hospital, and he's like, I'm fine, leave me alone. I want to go home and be with my family. Number two, the other gentleman is nothing detrimental to the results of that other person who's a victim, but appears to be okay after suffering some serious stuff. The other six presumed dead, and unfortunately they could be even in cars, I read, 50 feet under the water. I mean, it's sheer horror. That's all it is. And there's so much to talk about on this, but including the magnitude of what this is going to do to our country. And I'm being very serious because the amount of light trucks and cars that come out of that port is insane. The amount of other materials like sugar and gypsum and some other things. And then you have a major city, whether you like it or not. Baltimore's a major city. You have a major city that has 144,000 people. You have 15,000 people that work in that port, and you have 144,000 people whose jobs depend on the people that work in that port. So you literally could see a city of 500,000 in a metropolitan area that's approximately the 23rd largest metropolitan area in the country collapse. They are in record debt. And the debt is growing, and the projection soon in the next, by 2028, the projection to be losing $1 billion a year. Okay, but that's not including this. So when this happens, you're going to see a major city collapse. I mean, that's all there is to it. And they're the number one shipper of the products I mentioned in the country. So this is going to cause a disaster for us. And that leads a lot of people saying, well, wait a minute, is this possible? It could be terrorism. And I don't know is my answer to you. But the idea that it's not, or that this wasn't a strike of a cyber attack that led for that ship to lose its power to float into that barge, to float into the bridge and have it collapse. Let me share with you, if you know who Lara Logan is, or Lara Logan, depending on your pronunciation. She's a former CBS News reporter. And she tweeted out today, I'm going to read to you some highlights of this. Multiple intel sources. Baltimore Bridge collapse was an absolutely brilliant strategic attack on U.S. critical infrastructure, most likely cyber, and our intelligence agencies know it. Information warfare terms, they just deceived the U.S. along the Mason-Dixon line. They just divided the U.S. along the Mason-Dixon line, exactly like the Civil War. The second busiest strategic roadway in the nation for hazmat materials, now down for 4 to 5 years. Bridge built specifically to move hazardous material, fuel, diesel, propane, gas, nitrogen, highly flammable materials, chemicals, and oversized cargo that cannot fit in the tunnels. That supply chain is now crippled. Make no mistake, this was an extraordinary attack, Logan says, in terms of planning, timing, and execution. Quote, they have figured out how to bring us down. As long as you can stay away from the teeth of the U.S. military, you can pick the U.S. apart. We are arrogant and ignorant, a lethal combination. She has a quotation from somebody with that saying that in her post. This is on my Twitter feed if you want to share it or read it and look at it for yourself. At Chris Crock Show. That's at Chris Crock Show, ChrisKrok. The ship never got in the approach lane in the channel, she says, which is that shows that something was wrong, in her opinion. And they chose a full moon so they could have a maximum tidal shift, she says. For every $100 that goes into the city of Baltimore, 12 comes from shipping. Believe this will cripple the city of Baltimore at a time when they do not have the resources to recover. That's where we're at. And I want to ask you a question. The Chinese, we're now purging all cranes in our U.S. ports from Chinese software and Chinese made cranes because they're spying on us. They're seeing what our military is sending and shipping and where it's going to. that was exposed by our intelligence agencies, and they're literally getting rid of all the cranes that are Chinese. I'm not kidding you. You have 7 indictments of Chinese communist hackers that were in our country that planted the software in the buried within our critical U.S. infrastructure. Intelligence officials believe that, this is in today's news, believe Beijing had installed the malicious code in an effort to thwart U.S. efforts to defend Taiwan. A $10 million reward just released for information to the group and the defendants, 7 of them Chinese nationals, that came in and put the software in our system. So my questions for you are, do you believe this collision was an accident, or do you think it could be some kind of a cyber attack that caused the collision? Do you think that taxpayers outside of Maryland should have to pay for this bridge to be rebuilt? Because Joe Biden says it should be, but yet it's a toll bridge, $4 per time you go over it. It's run by the tollway. Why are we paying for this federally? And what do you feel is the most dangerous bridge you have ever crossed? Do you really think that that your life is in danger as you're crossing some of these scary looking bridges? And has a bridge ever given you like a panic attack? Talking to one of my friends today about Lake Charles, Louisiana. They have one that goes literally straight up. I think I was on that one time because I'm like, what the heck? I think I remember that one. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Errol and Cameron, you're on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hello, Errol.
Yes, hey, what's happening, man? I'm a retired shipyard employee. I've built the first Seawolf, and I helped build the Bush Carrier. What I couldn't understand when I heard about this was, why didn't the crew drop the anchors? Because that would have slowed them down if they had lost power. This is a blatant example of incompetency of the crew, and whoever owns that ship needs to rebuild that bridge, not the American taxpayers. They should have just dropped the anchors.
You know,
that would have.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You go ahead. You're the expert. At least you worked in this industry for years.
Right. I've welded on ships and submarines, and I put them together. So if you lose power on a ship, you don't have no brakes, but that's what the anchors are for, to hold the ship in place. And at least the anchors would have slowed it down enough to the point that perhaps maybe they could have called escorts of tugboats. Because I noticed also that this ship didn't have any tugboats escorting them. So this is a blatant example of the incompetency of whoever hired that crew and the captain. Because if they would have dropped anchors on the starboard and port sides, that would have slowed that ship down enough so it wouldn't have went to the bridge after they realized they've lost power.
Errol, this is fascinating with your expertise. Let me ask you a few questions, because I did hear one time this afternoon, and I'm glad I heard what you just said one time in the middle of all the coverage on Fox, and it's interesting. The Wall Street Journal just says they're going to investigate whether dirty fuel played a role in it. That's bizarre. I don't know if you have any comment about that, but here's a couple things. They said, why didn't they drop anchor to stop them or slow them down? They also said, where are the tugboats to stop them? So what you're saying is what a few people that know what they're talking about on Fox News were saying earlier today. They only mentioned once in all the coverage that I heard, so that's very fascinating. You said the same thing. The other thing is, let me ask you this. If they lost power, let's say it was a cyber attack that stripped the power of that vessel and caused it to crash. Could as far as you know, is the power also responsible for dropping anchor?
No.
So dropping anchor is manual. It's not electric.
It's on a completely different system, and it got backup generators.
Do you think
you could actually drop an anchor without having any power on it, but just releasing all the pressure from it?
Okay.
It's a switch, or 2 switches, or 3 switches. I haven't been on a ship so long where I've seen the guys actually drop anchors, but that whole ship was ran by a bunch of incompetent boobs. Okay,
now do you think that some people saying, like former CBS reporter Lara Logan says this is a cyber attack? Do you think how likely do you think that is possible? Is that they did call Mayday? They called for a Mayday before it happened, but that's and that gave enough time to clear the bridge.
No, man, the ship has manual and they have electrical power, and you can go hit a switch or several switches and the boat could be turned off. But there's also backup generators that kick on whenever they do lose power.
You're convinced this was not a cyber attack, it was incompetency. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying it's a competency of the crew, whoever hired these people, and they didn't have tugboats to help escort these people, the ship through the bridge. Because in Charleston, South Carolina, where I lived for 38 years, those ships that come in and out of those bridges, they have always got tugboats escorting them in and out of them. Do you think the ship did not ask for the tugboats? Is it possible they could rebuff the tugboats? True, that's a possibility. But if they didn't have power, they could have called a tugboat, and a tugboat could have come there within 2 or 3 minutes. It looks like they had 30 seconds before it crashed when the power flickered off at just at the quote-unquote right moment. It looks like. I mean, you're more of an expert than I am, and I ever will be in this. The other thing is, because I'm not, but the other thing is, I read today in the journal that there's 2 people that work with these guys. I don't know if they work with this particular cargo company or separately, but there's 2 people that go up. They're pilots, and they go up on the bridge and they look down and they direct them. Is that accurate from what you know? Right. There is a harbor pilot. He's called a harbor pilot. He's the one that brings the boats in and out until they're safely in and out of any kind of danger zone. Okay, so telling you, Captain, this is the incompetency of the crew that was probably inexperienced, and all they had to do was just drop the anchors. And by the way, do you think is this possible they still had a harbor pilot up there, and this still could happen if the people are that incompetent on the boat? If the harbor pilot was in the boat, the harbor pilot would have taken control of it, and he would have ordered them to drop the boat. If they didn't request a harbor pilot because they didn't want to pay for a harbor pilot, because some of these cargo ships are that cheap and pathetic, then it's all on whoever owns that ship has to pay for that bridge being repaired. Last question for you. I'm grateful for your expertise, brother, and for calling in right away. The last question I have for you is, as far as this goes, the question eludes me now. I had it ready on the tip of my tongue, but there was something I wanted. Oh yeah, that's what it is. For Baltimore, the Port of Baltimore, this is profound, and this is going to affect it for several years. How badly do you think this is going to impact our U.S. and global shipping, and how bad do you think this is going to end up being in the months and years to come to all of us and this economy? It's going to slow it down for maybe about a week, but then there's also Norfolk, there's Charleston, and they've got other ports that they can take the ships to. But can they handle 847,158 autos and light trucks, the most of any U.S. port for the 13th straight in a year? Can they handle first? Can they take over being first in the nation from them in handling automobiles, light trucks, farm construction machinery, as well as sugar and gypsum? Second in the country for exporting coal. 6th for importing coffee. You sure this isn't going to hurt us tremendously? It may hurt us for a couple of weeks or whatnot, but they'll just reroute everything to Norfolk, Charleston, and the other ports on the East Coast. I hope you're right, and I'm grateful for you, Era. Really grateful for you to call in today. Well, thank you, brother. Well, thank you for thanking me, man. All right, my pleasure, bro. Stay tuned and call in whenever you can on your expertise. Good stuff. That was a treat, man. I don't think anybody's going to get that kind of an expert, especially here. We're in the middle. We're nowhere near the sea. Hey, Kevin. All right, coming up next on the Chris Crock Show, ER doctors revealing the victim's tragic fight for survival, shock, hypothermia, exhaustion. I'll tell you about that next. I want to hear from you right now at 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. Do you believe this collision was an accident, or do you think it could be some kind of a cyber attack that caused the collision or something of that nature? And do you think taxpayers outside of Maryland should have to pay for this bridge to be rebuilt, as Joe Biden said we will? And what do you feel is the most dangerous bridge you've ever crossed? Ever have a panic attack or freak out on one of these things? 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227.
At about 1:30, container ship struck the Francis Scott Key Bridge, which I've been over many, many times commuting from the state of Delaware in our train or by car.
Who knew it? Nobody knew except for Joe that the train used to go all over, back up and down the bridge. Did you know that? A train. Joe took a train over the bridge. There was no train going over the bridge, but Joe took one. That's our president, and he's damn strong, and he puts fear into our enemies. All right, 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. On News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset. Do you believe this collision was an accident in Baltimore, or do you think it could be some kind of a cyber attack that caused the collision? Do you think taxpayers outside of Maryland should have to pay for this bridge to be rebuilt? Joe Biden pledges all the federal resources you need. We're going to rebuild that bridge. We're going to pay for that bridge. Really, it's been charging people $4 to cross it. Why are we paying for it? Let's go to Dane and Emory. You're on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey, Dane.
Good evening, Chris. How are you doing this evening?
Good, sir. How are you?
Pretty good. As far as the ship, it could be, I told your screener it could be a cyber attack, but it could be a little bit of both, the cyber attack plus the ship losing power. And as far as...
Well, I mean, isn't the idea with the cyber attack would be to cut the power so it collides in there? Why didn't the power go out like a minute before when it was in the middle of the harbor? Why didn't it go out after it went through the harbor? I mean, this is, come on, the timing is suspect.
Yeah, and as far as the bridge being rebuilt, I think that should come off the people who live in Baltimore, Maryland, not the federal taxpayers.
Yeah, and they're going to make us pay for the broke city. They're going to dump in like double the cost and say, to put all this crap in there to bail out the city that's bankrupt itself from its own policies and make us pay for it too. You watch. That is if Trump's not in office, it is. All right, let's go to Eddie in Fort Worth. You're on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey, Eddie.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, sir. Thanks.
All right. Well, I heard earlier that that ship, they said they dropped anchor before it got close to the bridge. God, excuse me, I'm still trying to talk with my dentures. Anyway, they dropped anchor.
Where did you hear that?
That was earlier today on BAP.
Okay.
And what I'm thinking of, I'm just wondering, because there's people saying that all of a sudden that ship just veered straight toward that pillar. And I'm just wondering maybe if it wasn't those anchors, the anchors just caught and slowed the ship down or whatever it is and just veered it off to that area.
Well, for the pilots and the operators' sake, I hope that's what happened, because this is a horrific event to happen. Thank you for your call, Eddie. All right, Robert in Grapevine, you know a lot more on this port, which I can't wait to hear from you next. Plus your call at 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. Also, this is not the first time this vessel has gotten into trouble. It's been flagged twice for deficiencies. I will tell you what we know about that coming up next on the Chris Crock Show on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset. By the way, 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Do you believe the collision was an accident, or do you think it could be some kind of a cyber attack that caused the collision? Do you think taxpayers outside of Maryland should have to pay for this bridge to be rebuilt? God knows what it'll cost. And what do you feel is the most dangerous bridge you've ever crossed on? Maybe it gave you panic attacks, etc. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset. Well, the Dolly container ship, which is what crashed into the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore this morning, was flagged for two deficiencies between 2015 and 2023. According to inspection reports, this from Fox News. Ship flagged for hull damage, impairing seaworthiness in 2016 in Antwerp, Belgium. And in 2023, June, flagged for an issue categorized under propulsion and auxiliary machinery and subcategorized as gauges, thermometers, etc. Well, who knows? Or could it be terrorism? As Lara Logan, former CBS News reporter, says, multiple intel services tell her the bridge collapse was an absolutely brilliant strategic attack on U.S. critical infrastructure, most likely cyber, and our intel agencies know it. In information warfare terms, they just divided the U.S. along the Mason-Dixon line like the Civil War. Now, another thing to share with you is the that the Chinese communists have cranes in all of our ports, and the Wall Street Journal about 6-8 months ago did a report which I shared with you saying the Chi-Coms have spyware on all of them, and they're monitoring which ports our military is loading up on, what they're loading up on, and where it's going. And so it finally has been made a big priority, and they're getting all the Chinese cranes out of our ports. So, and then we have 7 indictments handed down today, according to Daily Mail, that 7 Chinese government-backed hackers who stole private information from millions of Americans and launched cyber attacks against the Navy and politicians. They're all from Wuhan, funny enough. 7 indictments, part of a pervasive effort to sneak malware into critical American utilities, including electric grids and water supplies. It's buried within the critical U.S. infrastructure. Intelligence officials believe Beijing had installed a malicious code in an effort to thwart U.S. efforts to defend Taiwan. $10 million reward for information on the group and on the defendants, leading to their arrest. Merrick Garland called it a 14-year effort to, quote, target and intimidate Beijing's critics around the world. A separate indictment coming out today about those hackers also going around and targeting and intimidating Beijing's critics in the United States and around the world. So don't put that above them. I'm not saying it was a cyber attack, but it sure is perfectly lined up. Do you believe this collision was an accident in Baltimore? Do you think instead maybe it could be some kind of a cyber attack that caused the collision? Do you think taxpayers outside of Maryland should have to pay for this bridge to be rebuilt, as Joe Biden's calling for? So, we're going to pay for it all. They're charging those people $4 a pop to go over that bridge. Why are we paying for it in addition? Now, I will say, for an argument, that port is the number one port for autos and light trucks, 847,000 in 2023. The most of any port for the 13th straight year, the most of any U.S. port. First in the nation in handling automobiles, light trucks, farm and construction machinery, as well as sugar and gypsum. Second in the country for coal exporting, and 6th for coffee. Maybe we do want to pay for it just so we can not interrupt that for too long. I don't know, but let's talk. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Also, what is the scariest bridge to you? What do you feel like is the most dangerous one you've ever been on? Producer Garrett just told me the Jokeland, I call it Jokeland Bridge is a double-decker. I would be afraid in that one because it's going to collapse on you because it's California. Everything's rotten there. 800, we have 2 lines open, 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. Let's go to Robert in Grapevine. You're on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey, Robert.
Hey, good evening. I've dealt with the Baltimore port, and I know a thing or two about it. Just to add to some of the comments that the gentleman before had shared with you. And what the main thing I wanted to point out is that it is a huge roll-on, roll-off port. So as you mentioned, the automotive processing capability of that port, there's not another facility or infrastructure anywhere on the East Coast that has that kind of capability. The Georgia Port Authority has been investing heavily, and they've got been in and out of the Port of Savannah. It's a big port and it's beautiful, but it's not the same as this. Go ahead, sir. Right. Yeah. They've actually been investing in Brunswick, Georgia, south of Savannah, to create more of a state-of-the-art roll-on, roll-off infrastructure. But they don't, again, that's all fairly new. They've been expanding the facilities that they have there, but I'm confident they couldn't just step up and absorb the kind of volume that's going to need to come through there and be processed. So I think for the shippers, it's going to be pretty crippling. Yeah, and then what about for us? I mean, how profound is this going to be for us? I'm also seeing that Baltimore, it's going to cost them 15,000 jobs at the port, an additional 144,000 that helps support those people. They're going to be foobarred, and then also that the port itself, how badly do you think this is going to impact us in this country for our daily lives, our costs of things, and everything? What do you think? No, I agree. I think it's going to impact us severely. You know, a lot of that stuff that comes in containers, as the other guy mentioned, that can be shifted to different ports along the East Coast. But the bigger stuff that has to drive onto ships and drive off, like tractors that are being built here that have to go overseas, or other products that we're bringing in from overseas, that stuff's all got to go somewhere. And so it's either got to come in there, go to another port on the East Coast, or go to the West Coast, and then has to be paid to truck it cross country.
Last two questions. Go ahead.
It's going to be a little bit of time before all that can be remapped and rerouted, and so as consumers, we're going to suffer from that. The port itself, I've dealt with the port, and it's really great people that work there, great leadership there at the Port of Maryland. It's just an all-star team, so you hate to see them impacted as well.
What two questions? How likely do you think it is that a cyber attack did this to that ship to shut it down so it could collide like that at that time? And number two, what kind of work did you do that has made you an expert in this? Because it sounds like you are.
I just can't comment on the cyber attack. I'm just not knowledgeable enough to have an opinion one way or another.
Okay.
I think just observationally, like you would probably say, anything's possible these days. So certainly I wouldn't rule it out, the realm of possibilities. And I've been working in logistics for in supply chain for like 30 years. So.
Awesome. One of my siblings works in logistics too. I thought about him today. I don't know if he works with that kind of with this port thing, but probably, because logistics is logistics. Robert, thank you very much. Appreciate your great expertise, brother.
Thanks very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, you too. Okay, we have two lines open, 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. Let's go next to Scott in Red Oak. You're on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Chris. There was several years ago that there was a bridge that was knocked out in South Texas and South Padre.
I think I remember something about that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one side of the bridge had been hit by a barge or ship or whatever. And if we paid for it, if Texas paid for that bridge, then we shouldn't be paying for that one up there unless they see that it was done by some kind of international force.
Right. I'm thinking about the bridge. Remember the bridge in Florida that got wiped out with the hurricane? DeSantis built that thing in like a month or two or three. And that's not the same. I'm not saying it's the same quality or capacity of this one. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's kind of different. That's Mother Nature.
I'm just saying though that Florida paid for it on its own.
Okay, and if Florida paid for that, then why didn't Maryland? Why didn't Boston pay for theirs?
I mean, they're the ones getting enriched for decades and decades and decades at this poor. Why would we have to pay for it? I will say it could bring us to our knees economically, and therefore it would be in our best interest as a country to just pay for it so we don't suffer too much. But
no, I'm sorry. You can't continue to put stuff like that on the back of the American people. If the other states are taking care of their own.
Well, Biden certainly will. That's his MO. That's what he's done with student loans, making you and me pay for somebody else's student loans that doesn't need the help.
Okay,
yeah.
Did he pay the one in Texas? Or did Obama or whoever it was that was in charge back then pay for the one in Texas?
I don't know, brother. I got to roll, but I really do appreciate your great call today, Scott. Okay, brother?
No problem.
Thank you very much. All right. We got two lines open, 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. Nathan in Saginaw, you're next. There's one bridge in California that scared the crap out of him. We're going to hear about that. Ray and Denton, you have been on that Oakland one. I can't wait to hear from you guys. Two lines open, 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. The questions here about the Baltimore port today, the horror there that happened. Do you believe this collision was an accident, or do you think it could be some kind of a cyber attack, as former CBS reporter Lara Logan alleges today? And do you think taxpayers outside of Maryland should have to pay for this bridge to be rebuilt? What do you feel is the most dangerous bridge you've ever crossed? Do you really think that your life is in danger going over some of these bridges? And did the bridge ever give you like a panic attack, like the one at Lake Charles, Louisiana, going straight up and such like that? Our flyovers in Texas scare me sometimes. I mean, you could say, what's wrong with you? But, dude, some of those ones that are way up there, and it's just two lanes, it's like, whoo. And if you even try to look over, I mean, you're driving, you don't want to drive off the bridge. But if you just have the peripheral vision, you go, dude, it's like a block distance from the ground. It feels like, 200, 300, 400 feet. That car will go, whee. I don't want to be in that car. No, sir. Didn't like it. Okay, that's next. Two lines open, 800-288-WBAP. Also, ER doctors revealing what these bridge victims that fell in that water, their tragic fight for survival, shock, hypothermia, exhaustion. You'll hear about that coming up next. Chris Crock Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset. Well, the ER doctors are saying shock, hypothermia, exhaustion, that kind of is what we're looking at here for the people that fell in. And unfortunately, we know there's only 2 survivors as of right now. The other 6 are presumed dead. The current is swift, and the water is absolutely cold. It's 47, 48 degrees, guys. That's hypothermia type temperature. I heard somebody on Fox News earlier say one like within 2 hours to get hypothermia. Well, here's what the ER doctors that the Daily Mail talked to about their expertise on this. Those on foot, this is worse than we thought. Those that were on foot, the people, those workers, those salt of the earth, God bless them, workers who were sitting they were eating lunch or bread, they were eating their lunch or whatever at the time. They had an agonizing drop, is what this says, that would feel like hitting concrete as a result of major injuries that like broken bones and a ruptured heart with a small chance of survival. That's not including the water. That's just the distance. Falling down that distance. God help them. Once in the 47-degree water, hypothermia would kick in, causing hyperventilating, loss of motor control, confusion, and organ failure starting in just 3 minutes. That's interesting. Some guy that was on Fox said within 2 hours. I'm like, come on, dude. If your body, we don't understand this. Maybe you do, but I don't. My brain is interestingly, it's just a little hard to figure things out sometimes until you're in it and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in it, and I now know what you mean. And our body's core is supposed to be at 97.8 or something like that, or somewhere around there, or 98.7, somewhere in there. And when your body is submerged up to your neck in 48-degree water, you're screwed. Within a matter of, whatever the timing is, I don't know. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Do you believe this collision was an accident, or do you actually think it could be some kind of cyber attack that caused the collision, as former CBS News reporter Lara Logan is alleging on Twitter? Do you think taxpayers outside of Maryland should have to pay for this bridge to be rebuilt when they've been charging people $4 each way they want to go on this bridge every time, and it's run by Maryland DOT or whatever they are? What do you feel is the most dangerous bridge you've ever crossed? Do you really think that your life is in danger on some of these bridges? Do you ever have a panic attack on some of these bridges? 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Nathan in Saginaw, you're on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey, Nathan.
Well, I was going to point out that I've been across every bridge in the United States at one point or another. And this one out there in California is on Highway 101. I was going down it, and the Pacific Ocean's on one side. It's real scenic, pretty, and a mountain on the other. And I guess there's a 1,000-foot drop. I don't know, but I could hit that bridge, and where there was a canyon. And I got about halfway across there, and the wind coming down that canyon, it was blowing so hard that I had to steer into the wind, it seemed like, and speed up just to get across that thing. And I'll guarantee you that scared the living heck out of me. Because
are you a trucker?
Well, I was back then.
Wow. And you're getting blown more by the wind because you're taller.
Well, that trailer's like a sail, I mean, there's a lot of times out in California, there's a thing called the Santa Ana winds that are down south, way down south from where I was, that, you can hear on the radio. It just knocks trucks over one right after the other. And I've waited a day or two, to wait for that to calm down,
I think that sounds like a good idea. Okay, the Bixby Bridge. Producer Garrett looked it up. Thanks for your call, Nathan. All right, what's the height on the Bixby Bridge in California that he's talking about? What does it say? It's looking pretty tall. All right, look it up. See what the height is. Bill in McKinney, You're on the. Oh, wait, no, hold on, Bill. You're coming up next, but Ray and Denton, you're on WBAP. Then we'll get to you, Bill. Promise. Hey, Ray.
Hello, Chris. Hey, the Oakland Bay Bridge was rebuilt about 2008, and Oakland and San Francisco paid for it with the toll that they used to charge going across it.
Well, there you go.
And as far as the ship goes, with the lights going out, you're going to find out that their generators for their electricity went out on that ship, and that's what was causing the problem.
So wait, the lights go out and the generators didn't go back on, you're thinking?
Yep, because all of your controls are operated with electric air assist. So in other words, they don't steer it with a big steering wheel. They steer it with a little stick, and it moves your rudders.
You know, I'm looking at this post I just retweeted. If you've seen that movie from Netflix produced by former President Hussein Obama and Mrs. Hussein Obama, they produced a movie called Leave the World Behind, where I remember this part of the movie. A cyber attack has a massive container ship lose power and go right up on the shore, just like his movie, except this time it hit a bridge. Interesting.
I'm going by the fact that they threw everything in reverse, too. That big puff of smoke that you see coming out of that ship, because I've seen the video already.
Yes.
It's them reversing the engines.
Oh, okay, that's what that is, huh?
Ship. Yeah, they're reversing. They're throwing everything. That is all operated off of air. But as far as their rudder control and all that, that's electric. And when the lights went out, that's when they lost control of the ship. And then it came back.
I want to put you on hold. We got to go, but stand by. I want to hear the rest of what you're saying without rushing it, because this is fascinating to me.